This is video 4, Napoleon Hill's Positive Mental Attitude, The Science of Success. If you would like to purchase the book on Amazon, please click on the link at the top of the description below. You may wonder how to start overcoming this terrible habit of avoiding decisions. The way to develop decisiveness is to start right where you are with the very next question you face. Make a decision. Make any decision. Any decision is better than none. Start making up your mind. If you make some mistakes at first, take courage. Your batting average will improve. Knowing what you want will help in making decisions, of course, because you can always judge whether or not it will contribute to the overall picture you hold of your life plan. Sixth advantage. Inspires the cooperation of others. Not only does definiteness of purpose develop confidence in your own integrity and character, it attracts the favorable attention of other people and inspires their cooperation. A Californian told a story which is very worthwhile repeating. It is about a young married man who lived there with his family. Roy had been a precision craftsman for years, and during the war was employed as a toolmaker in a large war plant. When VE Day came around, Roy decided to obey an urge he had long suppressed. He decided to try selling. Any of you who are familiar with the selling field know full well the difficulties salesmen had after the war due to material shortages. About all any salesman could do was show the customer a picture in the catalog and express a hope. Roy started as a salesman by bumping his head against stone walls on almost every hand. This, at times, became discouraging. One day, during one of these periods of discouragement, Roy dropped by the office of a friend and poured out his troubles. He said he was almost on the verge of deciding that he had made a mistake, that maybe he should not try to be anything but a bench worker. He was seriously thinking of quitting this job he had dreamed about. At this point, his friend interrupted the conversation to say, "Now look here, Roy, if you are really a salesman, you should develop that trait. Let me tell you about a book which contains some very potent ideas that can help you make a wise decision. The name of the book is Think and Grow Rich, written by Napoleon Hill, and I strongly urge you to read it. I am going on a vacation for the next 2 weeks. When I get back, let me know what you decide." The very day on which his friend returned home, the telephone rang, and Roy was on the wire, anxious to come over for a chat. A few minutes later, a brand-new, shiny car rolled into his driveway. Roy got out waving his arms and shouting, "What a book!" Hardly waiting to say hello, Roy excitedly said, "That book you recommended sure has dynamite in it. See that new car? I got it while you were away as a result of reading that book. Here's what happened. As I walked into the showroom, I saw a car just like the one I wanted, and I made up my mind I would have it. In fact, I could already feel myself driving it down the street. Another thing, I had heard about the rackets rampant among automobile dealers, that in order to get a new car you had to hand them a sizable gift under the table, take a terrific loss on your old car, and buy many extras. I had conditioned my mind according to the instructions in the book, and I refused to accept these limitations. I made up my mind that I was going to get a clean, legitimate deal, or none at all. To make a long story short, within a week I got delivery of the car I wanted. It was no surprise to me, for I had every confidence I would do just that. But apparently it did surprise everyone else, including the dealer himself. As I was about to drive away, he asked me, "Mister, do you know why it is that you are getting this preferential delivery on your car?" I looked quizzically back at him, wondering what his point was. Then he said, "I want you to know the reason. It is because when you walked into my office for the very first time, I sensed or felt something different about you that I had never experienced before with any of my customers. Something in the way you walked and in your attitude made me feel that you really needed the car and that you were determined to get it. Your self-confidence so inspired me that I decided I would do all I possibly could to see that your desire was fulfilled. That's why you're driving away a car today." What's the payoff in this story? That young man walked with definiteness of purpose, and he had conditioned his mind so thoroughly that the automobile dealer subconsciously picked it up and acted in accordance with a positive suggestion. This is a simple story, but it reveals a precious secret. You may draw on your own conclusions as to what the secret is. The most profound truths are wrapped up in simple incidents which escape the notice of most people. This is not the end of this story. Roy has completely changed his habits of thinking. He left the first sales job, which was proving so disappointing, and within a week after getting the new car, he was offered 5 different selling positions, each one of which held greater opportunities. As Roy expressed it, I carry this book around with me, and whenever I feel like I am slipping, I pull over to the side of the road and read a chapter, and it puts me back on the right track. Definiteness of purpose does indeed inspire the cooperation of others. The man who knows where he is going and is determined to get there will always find willing helpers along the way. 7th advantage. Prepares the mind for faith. Greatest of all the benefits of definiteness of purpose is that it opens the way for the full exercise of that state of mind known as faith. It makes the mind positive and frees it from the limitations of fear, doubt, discouragement, indecision, and procrastination. Doubt usually results in alibis, excuses, and apologies for failure. Nearly everyone agrees that discouragement is the keenest tool in the devil's toolkit. We have emphasized the dire results of permitting indecision to leave you forever on the fence, letting others do your thinking. Procrastination is another deadly form of this same weakness. It is the common weakness of mankind and is overcome only by persistence and self-discipline. More information on this subject will be given in a future lesson dealing with self-control and habit. 8th advantage. Provides a success consciousness. Definiteness of purpose provides you with success consciousness and protects you against the influence of failure consciousness. Through the application of a principle to be discussed under the 3rd big idea, the mind becomes sold on succeeding and refuses to accept the possibility of failing. Here's a true story illustrating how success consciousness launched a young man into a growing industry in a novel and dramatic way and caused him to lead his entire field with new ideas. This young man lived in Salt Lake City several decades ago. He was an industrious fellow who worked hard and saved his money. All his friends admired his thrift. Then he did something which caused many of his acquaintances to shake their heads and question his good sense. He took all of his hard-earned money, amounting to over $4,000, out of the bank one day and went to New York City to the automobile show and spent every cent of it for a new car. As if this were not a sufficient display of apparent foolishness, when he got the new automobile home, he put it in his garage, jacked up all 4 wheels, and proceeded to take the car apart, piece by piece, until he had the whole shop littered with parts. After carefully examining each part, he put the car together again. Folks who saw only his outward action felt that he was just plain wacky. He gave them still further reason to tap their heads and point at him in derision, for he repeated the process of taking the machine apart and reassembling it not once, but many times. In a few years, those who had scoffed became convinced of his good sense. For that young man was Walter P. Chrysler, and when he began making automobiles, his product led the entire industry in worthwhile improvements and innovations which increased the joy of motoring. Little had the casual observers known what had been going on in the young man's mind. They had lacked the insight and understanding necessary to see a method in his madness. They had never heard of a man's definiteness of purpose conditioning his mind and deliberately making him success conscious before he ventured into the business. This completes this section. If you would like to purchase the ebook on Amazon, please click on the link at the top of the description below.